Okay, we will call this meeting to order of the July 1st regular town council meeting. And we had a salute to the flag earlier at our 4:30 meeting to interview candidates for a couple of committees. So we won't be doing that again, but we will take a roll call.
Councilmember Andrews. Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Casissa.
Here.
Vice Mayor Thomas.
Here.
Mayor Ravazio.
Here. Okay, this brings us to open time for public comment. Any member of the public who has something that is not on the agenda to talk about, comment on, is welcome to step to the microphone now. Looks like RJ's daughter has a few things to say, but not sure she's ready to get up there to the microphone. But is there anyone online?
From our attendees online, we do not have hands raised, and we did receive an emailed public comment earlier today that was forwarded to council and previously to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and it is on the website for the public to view.
Okay, thank you very much. And our agenda says there are no presentations, but we'd like to make a little bit of an exception. I'll turn it over to Adam Wolf.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ravazio, council members, and really just wanted to, we finally reached the last week of RJ's tenure with the town. It's been, I appreciate RJ giving us several months advanced notice, and we've talked about this at prior council meetings, but we're finally here where I wanted to just take an opportunity to recognize RJ's tremendous contributions to the town, our organization, the community as a whole, and really his service to Corte Madera and actually beyond in Marin County as well. RJ, as I think many of us know, and I've made mention to the council, is kind of retiring from public service at the moment. So it's actually a long, almost 20 years career service on behalf of the public, and is going into his own private business. I've personally had an opportunity to already thank RJ and did so about a month ago, but I do think it's worth publicly reiterating some of the tremendous achievements that have been accomplished under RJ's leadership as the town's public works and sanitary district 2 manager. This is well, let's just go through them because there's many and it could go on for a while, but I'll just do the highlights. Obviously, we're sitting in a beautiful building. RJ led that from start to finish in terms of the town hall and getting us to the point where we're sitting in this gorgeous building today. We have pickleball courts, Scotty Lap skate park, town park bathrooms, complete street projects on Tamil Vista Boulevard, Casa Buena, Paradise Drive, bike projects, Nellen and Warnham, and the old Redwood Highway bike path. I know we're doing Hart Street connector now. The one on, I'm forgetting the one on the east side. What was the one we just completed? Echo Avenue, of course. I can't forget that. Stormwater master plan, sanitary sewer master plan, really getting some critical climate adaptation projects off the ground, shoreline adaptation engagement effort with the Marina Village berm enhancement project. We're doing some great work on the Christmas Tree Hill evacuation improvements and undergrounding project, Tamil Pius overcrossing project. And literally that's just in my time as a town manager in the last 3 years. I mean, so it goes way beyond that. And so really RJ, I think, has set the standard, which is great to have in your own building, a standard setter. It's got other challenges to deal with, but no, he just really sets the standard for getting things done efficiently, cost effectively, also getting them done right, and always really fighting for the town's best interest in all the projects. Personally, I've mentioned this, but it's been a pleasure to work with RJ. He's taught me a ton. Great to be able to work with him and understand the world of public works, and just a little bit. It's very, there's a lot to learn there. So just wanted to take a moment to express appreciation, do it publicly, recording this moment and also give the council an opportunity to recognize RJ's accomplishments as well. So with that, I will turn it back over to Mayor Ravazio.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know that I'm pretty sure we all feel the same way you do, that we wanted to cry like his daughter when we first found out he was moving and leaving us. But would anybody else like to say something before I give a few little remarks? Eli?
RJ, remind us what year you started here again? Yeah, same as me. I just, I want to keep this brief, but I can't tell you as a council member how much peace of mind it gives us to know that we've got somebody like you in the public works director position or the SD2 manager position. It's, we always have had you to turn to whenever anything comes up, whether it's just a quick question or whether we, driving around town, notice something that needs to be fixed. Can't tell you how much I appreciate just your service, your responsiveness. You have always been so fastidious about every detail. It feels like nothing has slipped through the cracks, on your watch, and that is a rare thing. So can't thank you enough for your service. And I hope you feel good knowing that, your achievements in town are going to be here for decades, right? Both seen and unseen, above ground and below ground. All of the incredible work we've done, building new facilities, repairing infrastructure, like that's all stuff that our community is going to benefit from for decades. And that is a really special legacy to get to leave behind. So I hope you feel proud of what you've accomplished here. And I can't tell you how lucky we feel to have had you as part of our team.
It keeps getting better. No, I just want to thank you again for all the hard work. I think people don't realize that they may drive past City Hall, which is a little bit different because it's large, but complete streets, bicycle paths, even potholes, all these little things, people don't realize what's behind them and all the work. They just think, oh, we have a new bicycle path on Echo and it's really nice and we like it. But again, they don't realize all the work, the time, the staff time, trying to manage consultants, contractors. It's a whole poultry. It's not just, you're not just doing one part of a project. You're trying to manage multiple people, and it's just could be overwhelming sometimes, but you handled it all with grace. And I can't remember, maybe you can remind me, a couple of weeks before you left, we had a conversation and I asked you, I go, how much total million of dollars in projects do you think you manage over time? Do you remember what the number was? I can't remember. It's my last financial question for you. Yeah, it was like 140. You're right. It was, and it wound up being like 140 some odd million in projects, which is, it's totally amazing. So again, thanks for all your, and I wish you good luck in your new endeavor. I really do. Thanks.
Rosa?
And I just want to say, RJ, that I really appreciate your incredible expertise. And then on top of that, your ability to communicate to the non-engineers on here on the dais, as well as the public, and also for your incredible patience. And I really, really appreciate that. And I know that you're going to be an amazing success wherever you go, whatever you do. And I can't wait to hear about what you're making great out there.
Yeah. I remember when the engineering department had shrunk, so it was maybe one person. And I'm amazed at the way you have been able to come on board and build it up and staff it out with truly outstanding people, which means, all these various projects we're hoping on can get done well and on time. So thank you.
And I want to echo what everybody has said, because I agree with all of them on everything. And I would like to add that I'm really glad you're not leaving us for another city or another town. If you were going to San Anselmo or especially Mill Valley, I would have like stopped you somehow. I don't know. But I really appreciate what you're doing. I mean, the fact that you're going into this whole new field now to gain more freedom and gain more expertise in areas that can make a heck of a lot more money than the public realm. I really think that's a super smart thing. And I got a chance to talk to you and hear a little bit more detail about your plans. And, let us know if we can join you sometime if you need bigger staff. And the only question I have a financial question, because this is what first made me respect and appreciate you so much. How much grant money did you bring into this town during the time that you were here?
Go to the mic for this one. RJ, you got to go to the mic for this. Yeah.
So, I mean, some of it's up in the air with FEMA, but in terms of like competitive grant funds, somewhere in the 5 to 7 million, not including the overcrossing where they wanted to do a $15 million seismic and ADA project that we now got them to do a $45 million project. So
Thank you for that. And when you look at what a public employee might make while he's bringing in that $7 million, that's why we're losing you. And I'm hoping that one day we'll get to change that. And all of you in the public realm who are doing so much for so many will be better compensated. So, RJ, thank you. And I just know you've already given me permission to continue to bug you if I have questions about anything. So thank you for that. I'm hoping you're not going anywhere and that you might miss us so much that you'll eventually come back. And I do have a little token of our appreciation for you. I'll come on down. You can talk while I'm gone. Oh.
I don't have a whole big speech, but I just want to say thank you. The last 7 years has really been extremely rewarding on so many levels. Feel great about everything we've been able to accomplish, the team that we've built, the connections we made with the community, and I have nothing but fond memories and good feelings about my time here. So thank you.
Thank you, RJ. And thank you for bringing your family here tonight. Really appreciate it. Does your daughter have something to say? Why don't you let her go to the microphone? Maybe she's got something. Oh, that'll do it. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for the extra effort of bringing the family along. Really appreciate you guys being here. Best of luck, RJ. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for doing that, Adam. Really, really a nice touch. So up next is the consent calendar. The purpose of the consent calendar is to group items together which are routine or have been discussed previously and don't require further discussion. Any member of the public or council or staff may pull something off the calendar if they would like to talk about it in more detail and have a separate vote. Are there any requests for exclusions from the consent calendar? If not, is there a motion?
And before we proceed, we didn't receive any requests from the public to remove any items, and we don't have hands raised or emailed public comment for any of the items on the consent calendar either.
Very good. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thanks very much. And we move on now. We have two public hearings tonight. 5A is discussion and possible action to introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 10.40 of Title 10 Vehicles and Traffic of the Corte Madera Municipal Code to regulate electric vehicle charging spaces and adopt Resolution 30-25, rescinding Resolution 4224, and establishing the amount of penalties for violating the ordinance regulating electric vehicle charging spaces. And we have an recommendation and report from staff. Adam, is that you? And Phoebe.
Please take it
Yes,
away.
Phoebe, our Climate Action Director or Adaptation Coordinator. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'll be presenting this item this evening on EV charging space regulations and update to the fee schedule. So as the mayor read, staff are recommending two actions tonight to better facilitate the operation of the town-owned EV charging stations and provide a better experience for users of those stations. So I'll be discussing both the proposed ordinance, which is regulating the EV charging spaces, and then the resolution, which is updating the fee schedule. So as council is aware, installing public EV charging stations has been a priority that staff have been working towards for the past several years. And in January of this year, the first public EV charging stations were installed at Town Hall and Town Park. So there were 5 single port 32 amp stations installed at Town Hall, and 3 of these stations are designated primarily for use by town vehicles and staff. And that's one of those is shown in the right-hand picture there with the sign saying town permitted vehicles only, except Saturday and Sunday when they're not in use by town vehicles. And then the remaining 2 stations at the town hall site, those 2 pictured on the left that are closest to the town hall building, are reserved for use by the public. And then at the same time, there were 2 dual port stations installed at the Pixley Avenue parking lot of Town Park. These stations, which are shown here, also have 32 amps each, but they share those between the 2 ports on the station. So when there's 2 vehicles plugged in, they're splitting that 32 amps. It's providing a little bit of a slower charge. And staff have initiated a panel upgrade process with PG&E to increase the power supply at the site. That can take 18 to 24 months. But once that's completed, we'll be able to increase the amperage of these stations up to 48 amps and then also have capacity for additional stations. And as part of this project, there was some extra conduit installed, so an additional station can be installed right away without additional trenching work. In anticipation of these public stations being installed, at the December 3rd Town Council meeting, Council adopted Resolution number 42, 2024, which established the public EV charging user fees for these town-owned stations. The fees included a base fee of 42 cents per kilowatt hour of electricity used, and that was established to cover the operating cost of the stations and is similar to rates for public charging in other Marin jurisdictions. And those range from 30 cents per kilowatt hour to 47 cents a kilowatt hour. And these fees may need to be adjusted in the future to align with the actual operating cost of the station. So this resolution also included a fee escalator mechanism, which granted the Public Works Director or designee the authority to adjust these fees in line with the actual operating cost, with the goal of keeping them revenue neutral. And then the final component of this resolution was an overstay fee, which was intended to encourage turnover and allow more users to access the station. After 4 hours, the users would have 15 minutes to move their vehicle. And then after that point, they'd be subject to a $1 per minute fee with a cap of $50. That was originally proposed at $25 by staff, and council increased it to a $50 cap. This fee was intended to be in effect from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily with a pause overnight so that nearby residents could charge without needing to move their car in the middle of the night. And following the installation of the chargers, staff worked with Blink, which was the selected charging vendor, to implement these adopted fees. However, Blink software has been unable to implement all of the elements of the adopted overstay fee at the same time. So the by the minute fees, pausing it overnight, and the 4-hour limit, all of those things at once. There's some limitations within the software system. And while most of the users of these stations are charging for less than 4 hours, the average is 2.7 hours. Staff have observed some vehicles that are parking in the charging spaces all day, even after their car is finished charging. Staff have also observed and received complaints from residents about cars that are parked in the spaces without plugging in at all. And there's currently nothing in our municipal code that allows us to cite vehicles that are either parked without charging or parked for longer than the time limit. So to address these issues, staff are proposing an ordinance, which was included as attachment 2, to amend Chapter 1040 of Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic. And this ordinance is essentially adding EV charging spaces to the list of no parking areas in the code. So vehicles that are not actively charging or that stay for longer than the posted time limits would be subject to citation under the ordinance. The town has already adopted a $40 fine for violations of this section, this no parking area section, and that would apply to vehicles in violation of the ordinance, and that's pursuant to the most recent Marin Police Authority sales schedule. So this would be creating parity between the EV charging space violation and similar no parking area violations, and would facilitate enforcement by town code enforcement using the existing processes and notices of violation. It's also similar to fines in other jurisdictions. San Anselmo has the same fine, and others in the Bay Area range from $10 to $50. So it's within that range. And then to provide clarity to users of the station that the currently adopted overstay fee is not being enforced, staff is recommending to rescind and replace the previous fee resolution to remove the overstay fee while retaining the current base rate and the fee escalator mechanism. As of yet, no analysis has been completed as to whether this 42-cent rate is covering the costs, and that's because we don't yet have enough data on the typical use pattern of these stations. They've been installed for less than 6 months, and there's been a few outages that we've worked out some kinks with the electrical system as well as the software system. So staff don't feel that we have enough data on how the stations are being used, sort of the typical times, because that's what really impacts the costs to make any adjustments at this time. And instead, we're proposing that we keep the current rate and use the fee escalator mechanism to make any adjustments going forward. And that would likely be on a sort of an annual basis, looking at the total fees collected and the total PG&E bill for the site. And then just to touch briefly on implementation plans for this ordinance, if it is introduced tonight, it would return for a second reading at the August 5th council meeting and then go into effect 30 days after that, which would bring us to September. And in the meantime, staff plan to improve signage at the charging stations to communicate these regulations more clearly with the standard California Department of Transportation signs that are shown here. So the no parking except for EV charging, and then the 4-hour EV charging sign. We'd plan to order that to specify from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. to be in alignment with the previous overstay fee. We'd also plan to update the striping at the sites. So currently only the ADA accessible site has striping that says EV charging only, because that's what the building code requires. It's sort of silent on what the other spots should say, but staff feel this is creating a misconception that the other spaces are okay to park in, which isn't the message we want to communicate. And then we'd also plan to have some temporary signage at the site explaining these regulations and the start of enforcement, and provide warnings ahead of issuing any citations, because we know we have some regular users at that site, which is great. We don't want to catch them off guard. So the options for council to consider tonight are to introduce the ordinance and or adopt the resolution as presented in the agenda packet, introduce the ordinance and or adopt the resolution with modifications, or take no action at this time and provide direction to staff on preferred next steps. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you kindly. Do we have questions from council?
Yeah, just a couple. Do you think this will work as a deterrent?
I do. Yeah, I think people in general, once it's better posted, will follow these regulations. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's the only question I had.
Elon? Okay. Rosa? Jim? I just have one question. So if somebody overstays the limit and we go into the dollar a minute mode, is that automatically charged to their account, or how do we get that money?
No, so that's what we have not been able to implement through the software system. So this ordinance would be enforced by town code enforcement staff.
So someone would have to come and put a ticket or envelope on the window, on the dashboard of, okay.
Yeah.
And do we have the staff to do that, to monitor? Do you think we're going to be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we have code enforcement that is currently monitoring parking and on our own town staff, and these are in close proximity. It's sort of one of those things you can check on your way in or way back from being out in the field. It's not ideal. I mean, it would be nice to have a self sort of enforcement mechanism through the software for sure. That's what we're hoping for. But at the same time, I don't think the limited stations that we have now is going to cause too much of an impact. And I think what we try to do is make sure, I think as documented in the staff report, there's an educational component. We try to get people to understand what the rules are, make sure we do that, maybe hit a little harder at the beginning, and then people sort of start to understand what the rules are going forward. And found that a couple of tickets go a long way to
Word spreads.
Word spreads, exactly.
Okay, thank you. And so any other questions for Phoebe? Are there any questions or comments from the public on this issue? Looking in the room, not seeing anybody jumping up. How about online?
Yes, we have a hand raised from Roy Wolford.
Hello, Mr. Wolford. You can unmute yourself.
Good
And
evening.
Hi.
Question not about the EV parking or anything at this point, but about the staff report that's using, I have 3 questions. And I have additional commentary, but I'm not going to talk to that. I'm going to submit to Lorena the information, and hopefully I can get the questions answered. And they're not necessarily easy to answer. Okay. So first question is, why is the town using the 2020 cap as a foundational document? So that thing's like 5 years old. A lot of things have changed. Has anyone recently reviewed, second question, has anybody recently reviewed the 2020 cap to verify estimated assumptions were accurate? For example, sea level rise projections were very high. Last question, third question, why was subsidence settlement not mentioned in the doc? It is a significant factor in relative sea level change. Settlement has impacted the infrastructure and structures built on bay mud. It's all sinking. This is what occurred in Marina Village and Mariner Cove over the past 65 years. That settlement number is from 1.7 feet to 5.5 feet, so that's sinking, with additional projection settlement of up to 2.1 feet. So it's a lot of things going on, but there's a lot of things about this whole climate change and issues to be answered, assumptions made, not necessarily correct. My document that I sent Lorena will show that if other information. So I'm not going to present that tonight. Thank you for listening. I hope I do get an answer to my questions.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Wolford. Is there anybody else online?
No additional hands raised from attendees online and no emailed public comment for this item.
Okay, so I will bring it back to the council for comments and or a motion.
My comment was just going to be that I thought it was a shame that we were going from having this automatically enforced, so to speak, by the actual chargers to needing to have our staff enforce it. But it sounds like we actually were never able to have it automatically enforced. Did we, just to kind of understand, did we not take the need for like this type of feature into account when we were determining which vendor to go with for our EV charging stations? Because I know that, like, to throw out two additional vendors, for example, ChargePoint and EVgo, I believe both offer, support for property owners to, have an automatically charged overstay fee. Was that not something that we took into account when we were determining which vendor to use?
It was something that staff looked at, and the Blink system is able to implement an overstay fee. They're just not able to implement our overstay fee the way that on all the components together.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I mean, I guess I'm wondering if it might be worth us considering, like, if it might be worth us being informed of what type of automatically charged overstay fee Blink can support in case the council is interested in pursuing this automatically enforced thing rather than committing additional staff time, code enforcement and CMPA to monitor parking. I guess that's just a thought. I mean, I'm not opposed to what's presented here. I'm just wondering if there's maybe one other option that we should consider before making a decision.
Yeah, so I can provide what I'm aware of the Blink system and what it can enforce. And I think the real sticking point, the thing that it could not do was the overnight pause. And so that was something that staff felt was important so that people wouldn't have to move their cars in the middle of the night. It can do a charge after the vehicle is fully charged. So the vehicle has completed its charging and it's still plugged in, it can start fees at that point. It can do sort of parking charges, and it could do sort of by the hour charges.
Yeah, and I was going to just piggyback on that because I think that's the unique thing here is and maybe what other places and these other companies may also have the same challenge, but we're trying to do an overstay fee and then say, we want it to stop so that nearby residents can actually use that without getting charged the overstay fee because they're going to be sleeping and it's a longer period of time, right, during the overnight hours. And that happens to be the case in close proximity. Not all the stations, like if we were going to put one out over on the Cove Park or San Clemente Park, or in the parking lot there, it's not really a convenient place for nearby residences or multifamily residences to go have that convenience factor of parking it there overnight and you wake up and you go get your car. So it may not be a problem in other locations, but it happens to be here because we're trying to have this dual functionality of this system. And I don't know, we can look into whether some other systems have that, but that was just, I think, a couple steps further than we had actually planned out in the implementation and asking those questions of knew it could do an overstay charge, but just not the pause overnight. And so that was one of the things you find when you just get into the actual implementation of the specific regulations that the council approved, that we thought were good regulations too.
Okay. I mean, I guess my thought is, in terms of the actual policy questions that we're trying to address here, I'm not sure, I guess, why we would find it necessary to commit additional staff time to enforcing parking so that we can make sure that we have an overnight pause when we're talking about, 4 parking spaces at Town Park and 2 or 3 or 4 parking spaces at Town Hall. I don't think that there's a whole lot of parking at Town Park at the Pixley parking lot. There's plenty of spaces for residents to park their cars overnight if they want to. I'm not sure why we would go out of our way to make sure that there's 4 additional parking spaces there for them to park their cars overnight. So I guess my question is, what is the benefit of making sure that these 4 parking spaces remain available for people to park their cars in overnight? And is that benefit worth whatever we're committing in
Well, it's for
staff.
charging. It's for EV charging. It's not for.
Okay, so the idea is that the residents would be able to charge their cars there overnight without getting hit with
it was for the people who in the multifamily who don't, some of them, frankly, either their HOAs don't permit it or it's harder to get them installed in their garages and a lot of the multifamily apartment complexes, at least not yet.
Okay.
This provides a benefit essentially for those residents that live close by. They if they had an electric vehicle, they could charge it there overnight.
Okay, I get it now. Okay, well, I think that works for me.
Down here?
I have a question. If they do park, how are they charged? And what is the billing mechanism?
If they're charging their vehicle at one of the stations.
Okay.
Yeah, so the station accepts payment by card, Apple Pay. You can also download the app and pay through the app. So there's a variety of methods.
Okay. Yeah, is there any way the town could rebate the limited amount of money that it's going to be collected from, let's say you park your car at 10 o'clock, it's done charging at 2 a.m. for the 2 to 5 a.m. Time period?
I'm not sure how we would be able to do that since we don't have visibility into the payment system that's run by Blink.
But if somebody were, what level of detail is provided by the person who's charging his car?
So that's all on Blink's end. It's all sort of anonymous, the data we get. We don't get card information or.
I know, but does the automobile owner get that information?
Not sure I'm understanding the question.
I guess what I'm saying is that if, okay, we charge, instead of, if we're going to have staff time dedicated to this, just say after you're done charging your car, the premium fee goes in, it's handled at the Blink level, and people can come in and get a refund from the town if they can prove that it's between the midnight hour or whatever time frame it is.
What, Blink already would have the money, though. You're going to get the money from.
We wouldn't get it for. I think Councilmember Andrews, are you asking if we would just pay for this instead of paying staff?
No.
Is that essentially the trade-off to do this? I think it's
like having a pass.
I think it's something we could consider if we find that we're spending a lot of staff time doing this. It's also administrative time to process a rebate and figure out, go back and forth with the somebody who's asking for it on specifics and so on. But it's certainly an interesting, trade-off of you're paying one way or the other necessarily. But I think on the other side, you're paying for somebody to monitor, and maybe the fees from tickets or whatnot at least offset some of that cost. So I don't know. It's something that we can think about depending on how this goes.
Well, I think this is. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. How much staff time do you envision with this? It sounded what you said before, is it's more like, one of the code enforcement people are going to the east side, they're driving by at whatever, 10 o'clock in the morning. And then when they come back, they kind of like check it again. So it's not like they're going to be parked there. It's not like they're going to be chalking tires.
No, so Adam Wiley is our code enforcement official. He will go out. He's out in the field. He's back and forth like all day, going out to different parts of the town. I think he literally tries to get to every street and every mile of the town on a daily basis, just as a pass by and seeing what's going on. he has, I mean, he chalks up in Menke Park and around those areas where there are time limits from time to time. But this is just, I mean, well, one of it's, I mean, 3 of the stations are right here in the parking lot. I mean, you can look out the window and just see if someone is abusing that. The other 2 are very close by. I think it's a real quick drive by. And there may be at some point in time, chalking involved, but I don't see it as a major, and we talked to Adam about, he thinks this can fit pretty easily into his normal workflow. And if it does become a bigger issue and he finds himself over there from time to time, we can revisit this. But I think we feel comfortable that this is probably a good solution for now.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Is it feels like this has been a good discussion, and I think I think it sounds like we've all come to understand where. Yeah, did you?
Oh, no, I just have one other.
She's we're okay.
Keep going.
Okay, Jim, did you want to jump in?
Will this affect the parking spots over at the village or shopping malls?
That's
It's only our.
Just
Yes.
ours.
So I was just going to say, it sounds like we've all come to understand why you guys have proposed what you've proposed, and that this may be the best solution that we have available to us. And I was just going to ask that if you could just update us in like 6 or 12 months on just sort of, if there are issues coming up either from Adam's perspective or from the perspective of resident complaints, if residents seem to be feeling like folks are still overstaying, and not an agenda item, but just like maybe mention it in a manager report, that would be helpful.
And Rosa.
Yes, and my question was, now, did I understand that it's able to do the time limits, the software that we have now can do the time limits, but just not the overnight shut off? So,
Yes.
yeah,
It can't do both of those things at the same time.
right.
And it also can't do the sort of per minute fees. It's set up in a per hour fee.
Okay, because I was just wondering if we needed to throw out all of it because we can't do the overnight. You know what I mean? What I'm saying is, if we could still have the enforcement piece of during the day, but we just wouldn't have it for the overnight part. There's no way to just, like you're saying, you can do one, but you can't do the other. But what I'm trying to get at is how we could still have the machines regulate the hourly. And then we come up with some other idea, either or another vendor for the overnights. Is there any vendor who could do that? Who could do both?
I do believe there are vendors who do that because we've seen jurisdictions with similar fee structures, and staff can definitely continue trying to work with Blink and see if there's a workaround. However, the stations, one thing the stations can't do is fine anyone who's parked there without being plugged in, and that's the other sort of element that we're trying to address here.
Right, that they're there, that either it's not an electric vehicle at all, or it's an electric vehicle that's there, but it's not plugged in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we've taken care of the not being an electric vehicle there, because I have had that question because they weren't marked that you couldn't park a non-electric car. And this is, at other places I've been, there's an outlet there, but it doesn't say electric vehicle only. So it was like, I don't know, can I park here? So I think it's, good that we're getting that clarified. Anyway, just looking at, once again, the whole idea of having it be as automatically self-regulating as possible. But I think if we are just going to put this in place and check back with you in 6 months, we can see if it's a problem. So, thank you.
And I just have one question related to Blink. They're aware that we would like to have this capability, and my guess is if others are doing it, they're probably working on a way to be able to accommodate us or accommodate this need, right? Do they seem like they might be working on something, or not so much?
I have asked Blink if they'd be willing to add this feature, and so far they have not been
Okay.
particularly interested in that.
And how much would be involved in switching to a vendor that could provide that? Is that just software or is it also hardware? How much would be involved?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure. There are some stations that can be compatible with other softwares, and some of them are closed and they only will use their own software. So I don't know the answer to that question. And that's something we could look into.
But something to keep you busy. I mean, I think exploring that is something that obviously the council would like to see.
Or if we're
Okay.
going to put in more.
Yes, especially as we put in more, we're going to want to
competitors
streamline
that do it.
even more, importantly. Okay, so not seeing any other questions from council, opening it up to the floor. Is there anyone from the public who would like to either comment or have questions on this issue? And seeing nobody, is there anyone online? Oh, I already did that? Okay. Well, thank you. I obviously want to make sure the public gets heard here. So bringing it back to council, is there a motion?
Yeah, I am happy to make a motion to introduce an ordinance amending chapter 10.40 of the municipal code regulating electric vehicles. And I am also happy to move adoption of resolution number 30, 2025, rescinding resolution number 42, 2024.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries.
thank you. Okay, we will move on now to 5B, which is another public hearing. Consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 31, 2025, approving the town biannual budget for fiscal years 25, 26 and 26, 27. This is a 2-meeting item. This is the second meeting to discuss this item. The first was on June 17th. And we are looking for a staff report.
Budgets.
Chris Petlock, come on down.
Madam Mayor, budgets to pass
Oh,
down.
budget? Wow. Here we go. Read it quickly.
Yeah.
You got to block the glare for us there. No, didn't anticipate that design issue.
Beautiful.
You can't think of everything. You just
Ron Cappy.
I know.
You need a remote control.
The peak of the summer solstice is. No, it's good. It's good. Chris is going to really lead this presentation. This is obviously the second meeting on this item, and we had a good, healthy conversation on June 17th, introducing the budget, the town's budget, and I'm going to kick it over. And thank you for your comments at the last meeting. Going to have Chris do a briefer presentation on this, but still we want to ensure that those listening for the first time and the public understand this item as well. So
Thank you. Take it away, Chris.
Good evening, Council. Thank you again. So I've prepared a brief presentation taking into account all the feedback we received at the last meeting and various conversations, and then staff also took a hard look at some of the funds. And so I just want to start with changes from the first reading. We're proposing to increase the council discretionary fund to $70,000. We've refined and revised the recreation fund budget. Working with the Parks and Rec director, we really dug into things. We talked through revenues and expenses, and I think we've come back with a really nice proposal for the recreation fund. And we expect that the fund will show a surplus in year one, and we're expecting a slight deficit in year two, but we've got some time to work and talk about that before we get there. And overall, we do expect the fund balance to stay in a positive for the outgoing years. Next slide, please. So we've added some pie charts to help visualize some of the town's revenues and expenditures. And I think based on even some of the comments we heard from folks that were going to for our sales tax and finance committee, we can even do some more visualizations with input from those folks. We've moved outside human resources from the finance department into the administration department. And then we worked on formatting and style suggestions from you folks. Next slide, please. So I missed one there. There we go. Thank you. I thought there was one more. We also increased the wildfire mitigation budget to $300,000 in the Measure F sales tax override fund. And then we updated the town budget to include the proposed reimbursement in sanitation district number 2 biannual budget that wasn't quite exactly aligned. So we found a few other places that were not quite adding up right, but those were not quite as significant as that. Next slide, 2 slides, I think. So overall, as we've talked about before, a third of the revenues come from property tax, which is relatively steady year in and year out. A third of the revenues come from sales tax. And I think, as we all know, that can be quite volatile depending on the economic conditions. And then a third of the revenues come from other taxes and fees for service, which can be found in the detail section of the budget report. Overall, we've taken the approach of being very conservative with revenues, considering, current economic outlook and just really overall uncertainty, particularly in the retail sector. So we've tried to be fairly conservative. Next slide, please. And again, nice pie chart here showing visually we've about a one third, and then how the last third kind of breaks out amongst the various fees and taxes the town collects. Next slide, please. So again, we're trying to be very conservative and trying to keep revenues lower than what we expect inflation to be in the outlook. And I think that will serve us well to, under promise and over deliver. We're expecting property taxes to sort of level out given uncertainty with interest rates and threatened tariffs on building materials and the like. Next slide, please. So far, we are expecting the 24-25 sales taxes to come in a little higher than we projected for this year. But based on what the consultants are telling us, we are expecting this next fiscal year to be challenging in the retail sector. So we've tried to account for that in the revenue side. We're okay. Maybe go up 1, 2 more. Okay. 1 more. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Lorena. So again, we are expecting to increase reserves in the average daily cash on hand. So we are projecting more interest income, even though overall we expect interest rates to remain relatively flat. And I know there's pressure from some that they go down, but I think for now we're just projecting they stay flat. Next slide, please. So again, general fund expenses, the largest, of course, is employee costs. We're all fairly well aware of it. They make up about 75% of the general fund expenditures. And most of the increases that we're looking into our work plan are really scheduled increases related to scheduled step increases. And then, of course, for uncertainty around CalPERS performance expectations. We've tried to take as much of that into account when we're looking out over the next 2 years. Next slide, please. So again, even though staffing costs, we do expect to go up, we are forecasting that the number of people working for the town remain relatively flat over the next 2 years. And again, the changes in the salary are just really related to turnover and schedule increases and so on. Next slide. And again, police and fire, we expect it to increase based upon the recently negotiated contracts. The retirement UAL costs are increasing related mostly to CalPERS not meeting their expectations. And I think we expect that to continue going forward. Next slide, please. And again, a pie chart just showing how our costs break out the pie. There are a lot of very fine slices in this pie, but these are really kind of the major costs. Next slide, please. So we are budgeting for surplus in the next 2 years. And we do expect, we are recommending that down at the bottom, we are showing a transfer in from Measure F sales tax for project management staff. Next slide. And then transfers out of the general fund, we are recommending $1 million in each of the next 2 years to town capital project fund and $500,000 to be transferred into the capital equipment and technology fund to invest in new vehicles and the like and the assets for the town. Next slide, please. Corte Madera fund, which is shown in the ending general fund balance, the deficit is slowly decreasing over time as rental incomes exceed the debt payments. So we are seeing that decrease over time. And then the recreation fund is projected to show a surplus over the next 2 fiscal years. And again, we went back and tightened up that budget, and we do expect that to perform well. Next slide, please. And then council policy moves the general fund reserve from 20 to 25%. So we really see that general fund reserve go from, $4.5 million up to almost $6.5+ million over the next 2 years, putting us in a really enviable spot as far as being able to react to changes. And then finally, the undesignated general fund balance is decreasing. And again, a lot of that is really related to us increasing our reserves. Next slide, please. I just wanted to show a real high level of our capital plan here and show that we have identified funding for a very aggressive capital plan over the next 2 years. Next slide, please. And again, I wanted to show just a couple of funds. We can talk about your questions, of course, but I just wanted to show the sales tax override fund and the projects going on there. Next slide, please. And again, our the town capital projects fund, where we're transferring in that $1 million to fund the town capital projects over the next 2 years. And next slide, please. And then the recreational and park fund. And again, since our last visit here, Tim and I, the Parks and Rec director, dug in and made some significant changes and really kind of went through this line by line. So for this year, we're expecting a surplus. The next fiscal year, we're expecting a slight surplus. Then the out year looks like just a little bit of a deficit. But again, we have time to kind of sharpen our pencils between here and there. We'll talk about that more later. Next slide, please. And that's really what I have got. I'm super happy to answer any questions for you. And we have other staff here that can help out too if I don't know.
Thank you very much. I would just like to say we've come a long way since the days of George Warman and his abacus up there telling us how much was in every account. So really appreciate the modern presentation and organization. And are there questions from council?
Yeah, I just have a couple.
Pieces of paper did you have to tape together to do this?
Sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
How many pieces of paper did you have to tape together to calculate this? Yeah.
The old 10 column.
Yeah.
Okay, Fred. Go ahead.
I know Tim is here. Can you just talk about Park and Rec? Because I'm just trying to get my hand around the numbers. Because when I look at the numbers, revenue pretty much stays flat around 3 million. It goes up to 3,000,004 or so, 26, 27. But it's more on the expense side, where the expenses go from like 2,000,004 estimated this year. They jump like 600,000. And in 2 years, it's $1 million. So I'm just trying to get a grip around why the expenses are going up that much.
Well, I do have Tim here, and he can kind of talk through. I invited him over because I do know there were significant changes in what we were looking at. I can one line item I would like to highlight if you're looking at the more detailed budget or even the revenue number up there, if you could, yeah. So the very bottom line, deferred revenue, I'd like to point that out and just kind of talk about that before I let Tim jump into everything. So every year, as I understand it, on June 30th, Rochelle would go over and print a report, and that would kind of show what classes we had collected money for, but those classes weren't going to happen until July. And we really didn't have a good handle on that number until June 30th. And, I'm not sure how that was estimated previously, but I did want to make sure that we pointed that out here, that we, some of the numbers that are baked into the revenue up top, some of that is deposits we have taken for classes that are going to happen over the coming weeks and months. And so there is a negative number there, kind of backing out some of that revenue that might not have made it to this level before. But we'll continue to show that, and we'll talk about that. And then Tim can talk about the expense sides of things.
So I'm sorry, so the deferred revenue, it's actually shown the 450 shows it has it almost like an expense.
It is. It's a negative number. It's basically saying, oh, we took this money and your soccer class or your childcare class is going to happen in August or September. And so it's been a little hard to get a hold of that number previously due to software. And I think, again, my understanding is one of the Parks and Rec staff would come in at midnight on June 30th and run a report to get that number so that we had it for the auditors. But I'm not sure it ever really made it to the budget, but Tim can talk a little bit.
So that number also includes any type of facility rental. So anything that was done for the rest of the year was transferred over in that deferred revenue. So that was a number that wasn't really captured very well in previous budgets. But we've always done, for example, we do all of our stock registration right now, actually June, but it's actually for anything that's we're going to spend in August, September, and October. So all that revenue has to be moved over. Any facility rental we've had for a wedding or anything else that's collected, because they book a year in advance, has to be moved over. So that's a large chunk of that deferred revenue of that $450,000 that gets moved over every year at this time. And he's correct. Staff would come in and literally have the last transaction on June 30th, run a full report of everything that had to be transferred over, and then present it to the auditor. So they had everything we moved over. So they had any questions, here's everything we had to move over for deferred revenue. So we were doing that. And thankfully, the new system now we don't have to do that. We're very happy about that. We would spend many hours compiling all that paperwork to transfer it all over.
So does that account for the spike up then on the expenses? Because they're not really expenses, it's more like deferred income.
I don't think it accounts for the expenses spike up. That's projecting what for salaries or for contractors or expenses for those programs to go up over that percentage over those next 2 years.
Okay.
Looking at what the increase will be going forward those 2 years.
So I'm just trying to, again, get a grip, because it looks like from this year to 25, 26, it goes up like 600,000 on the expenses, because it goes from 2,000,004 to like 3 million.
Correct. That's what we're projecting it. If registration stays the same, expenses are the same, those costs are going to go up for all of those programs to cover that cost. Correct.
Okay. And it will go up. I'm sorry. It's a chunk of money.
It's a projection. I mean, we're looking at a 3 to 5%. I mean, everything's going up for supplies and staffing, everything else. So that's what we're looking at. Obviously, it may be less, but that's what we're looking at if we did that projection all the way through for all of our programs.
Okay. All right. And then just out of curiosity, it may be an Adam question, that the surplus in Park and Rec fund stays within the Park and Rec fund, correct? That won't be transferred out into the general fund?
That would be a council decision.
Okay.
We won't, I would never feel comfortable at the staff level doing that.
I mean, it's
Okay.
the same as we've been carrying a deficit, and it's just been staying in that fund as a deficit number rolled over. Same thing would happen with the surplus. So we'd keep it there. And then if the council at some point wanted, it was growing, if that'd be great news, we could have the decision about what we wanted to do with that. Whether that moves over to a rec capital fund and starts to fund some capital improvements, whether that goes to additional staffing, things like that. You could start to think about.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's all I had. Thank you.
Eli?
No substantive questions since we discussed this 2 weeks ago. I just wanted to kind of flush out one sort of fundamental dynamic for the public that's watching. We always talk about how Corte Madera is uniquely reliant on sales tax revenue, and 1/3 of our revenue is sales tax. But that does not mean that our property tax base per capita is any weaker than any of our neighboring cities, correct? It's just that we, in essence, have a higher baseline revenue because we have, in addition to the same property tax base, more or less per capita as all the other cities in the area, we have a much stronger sales tax base. Is that correct?
Yes, on the sales tax side, my understanding is there is some concern there. Again, Macy's and some of these other larger retailers aren't really doing so well anymore. So the dynamic there is changing, and I know the town manager has that on his mind very much. As far as the tax base for property tax goes, the growth on that really is dependent on turnover. That's been my experience. So if you have a community, you're already kind of built out already here, so you're not going to add a lot of new things. So seeing that is really dependent upon turnover and then the establishment of the new values.
Right. But when we look at, when we compare Corte Madera's property tax to, let's say, neighboring cities of comparable size that are also effectively built out, like, say San Anselmo or Mill Valley, there's no reason why, we would characterize ourselves as having a lower or a weaker property tax base than those cities. Is that correct?
No, not in any way. It's really kind of, as far as I understand, really kind of across the board the same. And I wouldn't want to generalize. I'm not a real estate expert,
Sure.
But my experience generally is popular communities, they turn over. People want to live here. This is a very desirable area. And so any of you that are in real estate, I'm sure you work hard, but those properties sell quick, right? So
Thank you.
So, Rosa, Jim? Okay, I would like to ask a couple questions. And first of all, on the subject of property taxes, one thing, well, there has been a real dynamic change in the last few years. It was always that Corte Madera was the rich town and Larkspur was the small town because they didn't have the retail tax base that we have. But their property taxes have gone up so much that we now have, their budget is the same as ours. They're up to 27 million, and that's largely due to increased investment and renovation, flipping homes, new homes being built, and then selling for $2,000 a square foot. And we're a little behind on that, but it's coming our way. It will move here. The difference between Old Town Corte Madera and Larkspur is nothing more than a block or two of a walk. So it should be coming our way, but there are things we can do to make our town more desirable so that more people will want to spend $2,000 a square foot to live here. Just a comment, but my question is a couple of things also on Parks and Recreation. On the capital plan, we are intending to put aside 1.28 million in 25-26, and then only 200,000 in 26-27. And I just wonder why there's such a significant drop there. Is that sort of I don't know. I don't understand why the planning is not continuing on to keep our investments up.
I would just note some of the projects we've come to the council in mid-year budget revisions. I think it's 1.08 million or something like that this current fiscal year. 25. Are you saying 25? 26, I believe, is the projects listed there. It's includes Menke, the Eastfields, Tim, what are
Town Park Playground.
Town Park Playground. So those have come up and have added up to a significant investment in parks this year. We have not talked, it's going to take some time to actually implement those and get through those. In the meantime, we're starting to build some funding for the future as well. The conversations about if we want to add to those, and I'll say the 200,000 is really what is remaining. There's 100,000 from Measure A Parks, and there's 100,000 that the council decided to fund in the Rec Capital Fund at the mid-year budget revision this last year in January. And so those discussions, if there was a desire to put more funding in there in the rec capital fund, we could have that discussion potentially at the mid-year budget revision. I will say this is sort of where you have the trade-offs between, there isn't sales tax funding, is the other point I'm trying to make here. Those are sales tax funds are already programmed for all the infrastructure funds. So this is really what's remaining between all those other competing projects that have been listed in the capital plan is $200,000. And we'd have to find another source, whether, to increase that, or, we do have $400,000, I think, in the rec capital fund. We apportioned that out over a period of years at the recommendation of the council. But if there was a great project that council felt wanted to get done in the next year, you could sort of put it all to use in the next fiscal year.
So it's flexible. It can grow. It's not a permanent demotion. Parks and Rec, I get it.
No.
Okay, and then the other question is, where do I find the Parks and Recreation expenses? I can't find those in my plan here. There was something I wanted to check on. Does anyone know where that is? I see the revenues, but not the expenses.
Yeah.
I'm missing it. Oh,
Start there.
page, well, yours is different than mine. Okay, thank you.
Right. It's in the actual budget, not in the
Not in the summary. Okay, I got that. So, I always bring this up, and I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, Tim and Chris and Adam. But I am concerned about our scholarship fund and how well we are serving those of limited reserves and income in our community. And I do want to make sure that we're making it as easy and as helpful. I heard from somebody who said an adult can only get a total of $100 scholarship. And I'm just wondering what we're doing there and how we are making sure that we're allocating sufficient money to really take care of those who need services that they're unable to afford.
So it's actually $200 per an adult, the initial allocation, and then we can allocate more. If you look on the revenue, sorry, it's very dim light. There is $50,000 proposed for 25, 26, and 26, 27. That is scholarships overall out of sales tax. So that is money that is transferred in that we allocate to scholarships for both youth and adult every year. And that is what I had come back, it was probably about 6 months ago, asking for that chunk of money, and then that allocates every year. If I run low mid-year, I'll come back and ask for more. But that's the kind of the earmark to start with that 50 grand for youth and adult scholarships for the fiscal year.
Okay.
That is still there.
What percentage, just roughly, obviously, I don't expect you to have a number on the top of your head, but how many people do we turn down who don't get funds because either we don't have enough funds, or, what are we serving the community?
So right now, I don't turn anyone down who's at least a Corte Madera Larkspur resident.
I'm sorry, say again?
I don't turn anyone down who's at least a Corte Madera Larkspur resident. So they'll get some percentage or some payment plan. They'll all get something, but I've never turned anybody down who's been a Corte Madera Larkspur resident.
Okay. And that applies to the after-school care program as well?
After-school program, any enrichment program, soccer program, adult fitness classes, anything. I have not turned anybody down as of today.
That's so good to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Really like to hear that. Okay, I think that was it. Oh, no, one more. Sorry. I'm on the Police and Fire Council, and I don't know the answer to this question. Well, I probably should, but so police and fire equal 47% of our expenditures, and those are going up like 9 to 10% every year in this budget so far. Is that going to continue? Because if we project that forward, that's a big chunk.
We just did the MOUs, right, with the police and fire unions.
Last August.
In salary. So a chunk of it, if I can remember, is in salaries. And I can't remember if they get 3.5, and then it's like 10% over 3 years. So if I can remember.
Yeah. And I will say we sort of this is a bigger increase this next year, 25, 26. We sort of took the same conservative approach and put that out to 26, 27. But in fact, police council and the police authority only budget 1-year cycles. When we get there, I think we're going to see more of a tapered effect in terms of the increases because of the MOUs and the contracts that were approved were not as significant as in the first year of the
Other than the fire station they want us to build.
That's the CMFA. That's a different,
Well,
yes,
right.
it's
And I'm sorry, if I remember on police, they actually budgeted for the addition, for the extra not the extra staff, but they staffed up with extra officers that they just hired. So that's already built into their budget, if I can remember.
that's correct. Yeah, the sort of built in some vacancies into the budget.
Okay, so that was all the questions that I had. Is there anything from the public? Open comment time or comment time on the budget? Seeing none, is there anybody online?
No hands raised from attendees online and no emailed public comment for this item.
Okay, back to the council for motion, comments.
I just have a quick comment. I appreciate all the work on the park and rec budget. I think you guys did a lot more digging that's been done in prior years. So I think it may be more representative of the actual budget. I do have two suggestions. Maybe when we come back mid-year revision is, and I'm pretty conservative, so I kind of going the other way. But in the park and rec fund, I don't know if we need to be sitting on $500,000 in that fund. I'm sorry, I don't know the magic number, but just theoretically, if there's $500,000 there and we go, hey, we should be keeping a minimum of 250, we may be able to take that 250 in the park and rec fund and put that into capital improvements for park and rec. But $500,000 may be way too much. And the other thing also on that is that I think this is the first year, and I don't know how many years that we actually have a surplus in park and rec. Because I remember when I was on Park and Rec Commission, we were running, I think, 400,000 plus deficits. So it's come a long way. So again, I appreciate, Tim, you and all the work your staff has done on that. And then the other thing, when you come back with the revisions, because I know Adam and myself had a conversation, Chris had a conversation, is on the ambulance fees. The ambulance fee shows up as revenue, I know, in our budget, but it's a pass through to Central Marin Fire. So just in my opinion, we're overstating revenue, I think, by 5.5 or 6%. So again, when you come back mid-year revision, we can either have that discussion, have it between now and then. I don't know if that money should be below the budget line, because again, it's not true revenue coming to us because it's just passing through. But those are just the couple of things, again, mid-year or so. But again, appreciate all the hard work on this. Thanks.
And if I could just piggyback on that real quick, it used to be that Parks and Rec was really being challenged to work like a business and make a profit, have proceeds, revenues at the end of each year to show. And I think we should consider at least aiming to break even. And if we're making too much and the revenues come in too high, then maybe we should look at cutting the costs or creating sliding fees or something where, I know that I used to have my kids in Parks and Rec stuff all the time. And I look at the prices now and I think, whoa, I wouldn't be paying that for my kids these days. So I think it would be great to aim at kind of breaking even. And if we have too much money, let's reduce some of the costs to make our programs more serviceable and more useful to the community at large. Just my opinion. I don't know if anyone on the council agrees, but there, I said it. Okay, we have no comment from anybody, and we are ready for a motion if somebody has one.
So I can go ahead and make the motion to adopt resolution number 31/2025, approving the town biannual budget for fiscal years 25-26 and 26-27.
Second.
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, and next up on the agenda, thank you very much, Chris and Tim. Thanks for hanging out when you got a long drive home, both of you. Really appreciate it. Okay, up next is 6A, consideration and possible action to waive competitive bidding and authorize the town manager to negotiate the terms of a new agreement with Mill Valley Refuse Services for collection, removal, and delivery for recycling, processing, and disposal of solid waste, and provide direction to the town manager regarding the preliminary terms of the new agreement. And do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. We absolutely do, and we're going to do this as a team effort here. I first want to introduce Scott Hannon. Scott works for R3 Consulting, and Scott has been a great source of support and has provided good advice during this process. Scott was also here at the March 4th meeting, where we had a workshop to discuss with the town council sort of the process going forward. We wanted to start this process early, give the council enough time to consider appropriate decisions along the way to a new contract for waste services in the town of Corte Madera. And so we're here now. This is our second meeting. The March 4th meeting, we heard from the council and we had a public meeting. Didn't get very many comments from the public, but we did hear some comments from the town council members about some additional services that the council thought we should be exploring. But I think generally received feedback about the overall satisfaction with the existing service received from Mill Valley Refuse Service. And at that meeting, council ultimately requested that staff begin the negotiation process with Mill Valley Refuse Service on a new contract, but at the same time reserve this option to release an RFP for a competitive procurement of services if the council decided that was the appropriate direction to go. So that's really what we've done over the last 4 months. Sorry, Lorena. Yeah, I'm going to ask you to, I think we're into this. This is a good slide, and I don't have it in front of me on my computer, but I'll try to turn around and speak to it a little bit. We're obviously talking about the end of the current contract with Mill Valley Refuse Service. It expires in December of 2026. And in order to give the council enough time to really consider all options, we're starting it early. The current contract has been amended once. It's a 20-year contract. It began in 2006 and really has been a continuation of the services provided by Mill Valley Refuse Service since, I think we said 1965 in the staff report, so almost 60 years. Over the course of the last 4 months, we've met with the leadership team of Mill Valley Refuse Service about 5 times in the last 4 months. We've met with Scott and Claire also, who's not here with us tonight. Our consultants, again, provided us with really good support in analyzing the various proposals and advising us on these essentially deal points. And I think we feel like staff feels like we've come to a really good framework regarding what would be included in a new agreement. And so we wanted to give the council enough information about how those discussions and negotiations have gone to this point, and really the overall framework for moving forward with really the next step, which would be sort of formalizing a new contract. With staff's recommendation is to move forward with Mill Valley Refuse Service and not go through the RFP process. But we are here tonight. I want to be very clear. 2 items for council consideration and action tonight is really to provide direction regarding, 1, consideration of whether to waive the RFP process. If we didn't want to waive it, we would sort of move into and need to start an RFP process very soon. So that's one clear piece of decision making for the council this evening. And then secondly, I think we want to hear from the council on the framework for a potential new agreement that we've outlined in this staff report this evening, and that Lorena is really going to walk through tonight. I will say from my own standpoint, the last 4 months in working with Mill Valley Refuse Service has given me a new sense of appreciation for their company, sort of the partnership, the longstanding partnership they've had with the town, their responsiveness. I mean, through the negotiation process, they've been very responsive, very transparent, sharing with us the sort of Excel spreadsheets that go through and talk about their operating costs and how things really look on their side of the ledger in terms of their operating costs. And so it's been I think a really good, positive working relationship, which I feel good about, and would feel good about going into a further agreement with Mill Valley Refuse Service. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully it's clear what actions we're requesting of the council this evening, and I'll turn it over to Lorena to really walk through the rest of the presentation, unless there's another slide I'm missing. And Scott will also be here for answering questions. And of course, we also have Mill Valley Refuse Service here as well to answer questions as well.
Thank you, Adam. So as you saw in the staff report, I included a table that had kind of the adjustments. There was a column for the town, for Mill Valley Refuse Service, and then the adjustments that benefited both the town and MVRS. So for the town adjustments, the first that we have listed is a curbside cleanup collection. This is a new benefit that staff thought would be important since we are going into the process of having more multifamily dwellings, and we're being pushed to create more housing for people all over California. So the current agreement didn't have any sort of curbside cleanup collection that was at no charge. And Mill Valley Refuse Service decided to add one annual on-call curbside cleanup for those multifamily dwellings at no additional cost. And MVRS will conduct marketing regarding the cleanup pickup so that residents are reminded of the service they're entitled to utilize. Then the increased administrative fee to the town, MVRS will increase the fee that's paid by their company to the town from $9,000 that's in the current franchise agreement to $12,000 annually. And this administrative fee is what's paid to offset costs related to the town's administration of the current agreement. And that $3,000 increase reflects the higher staff costs in managing the franchise agreement when compared to the costs of the original contract back in 2006 through its expiration in 2026 versus today's costs. For fire prevention support, staff heard it was a clear priority of this council to support that. And Mill Valley Refuse Service also agreed to support the town's fire prevention efforts. And by doing, they would be doing that by supplying 5 40-yard debris boxes each year to collect vegetation in conjunction with CMFA's Central Marin Fire Authority's vegetation management programs. They also agreed to conduct additional marketing and provide public information material regarding the one cleanup pickup of vegetation management, or what people know as the yard waste, during the fire authority and the town's regular vegetation management and fire inspection season, which I believe is going on right now. In addition to Mill Valley Refuse Services marketing efforts, town staff will also be increasing its marketing efforts on fire prevention while also continuing to educate the public on the current vegetation management efforts that are conducted by Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. Then for the portable toilets, the town receives recurring services to portable toilet units at Town Park, where we have one ADA unit and 2 regular units that are serviced 3 times a week. And then Granada Park, we have 1 regular unit that's serviced 1 time per week. And Menke Park, we have a summer schedule where we service 1 ADA unit, 1 sink, and 1 regular unit once per week. So as there's like a request for and a need to have something more semi-permanent, Mill Valley Refuse Service will be adding service for 1 ADA portable unit at Menke Park that will be in place year-round, similar to what Granada Park gets. And the town will choose a location since we're making upgrades and changes to that park. Mill Valley Refuse Service also committed to supplying the town with new style portable toilets, and accordingly, the town's going to be looking for and installing enclosures for those new portable toilets that they will be installing. And additionally, they agreed to adjust the baseline amount of free service to $30,000, which is like the allowance that the town gets for the service that they're doing. So right now, I believe it's in the current agreement that is $12,000 was the baseline, and with the CPI adjustments today, that allowance is $20,627. So they committed to making the jump to setting the baseline at $30,000 in the new agreement, and then adjusting annually by CPI. And then regarding the detailed rate review for 2 years, there's 2 methodologies that are used by Mill Valley Refuse Service to increase rates. They utilize a detailed rate reviews or the consumer price index for all urban consumers. So we did some evaluating on the options that are used for the CPI component of water, sewer, trash, and also historical rate increases, and then determined that the existing methodology minimizes cost increases to customers. So Mill Valley Refuse Service felt comfortable with keeping those methods and also agreed to use the CPI method to determine any rate increases for the first 2 years of the new agreement, rather than the detailed method. And then they will also provide more data results to the town to increase transparency on services, including dual stream collection contamination, which we know was an interest for the council, and also waste diversion rates. We think more data results provide the town with some oversight on how MVRS is performing in town, and it will also give them an opportunity to identify any service gaps within the community and the town. And then for the Mill Valley Refuse Service adjustments, the first is to allow an interest expense on capital financing. So staff believes it's reasonable for Mill Valley Refuse Service to recover interest costs needed to be paid for capital investments in its company, as that would assist with equipment and infrastructure upgrades and with new technology that's necessary for serving Corte Madera residents and businesses. And the town agrees that interest expense on capital finance could be changed to an allowable cost, which would mean that they can include interest expenses in their calculation of their operating ratio, which is used to determine the cost recovery through that detailed rate review process that I mentioned. And this change would also align the town's treatment of the provision of how they add interest expenses onto their financing, with that of how the other Mill Valley Refuse Service jurisdictions add it as well. And then for the change in the profit calculation, the current franchise agreement has a profit calculation that's based off the cost plus formula. And I'm going to let Scott kind of go into these two that I'm going over right now to provide that additional detail that you can all use to better understand this. The town agreed to allow Mill Valley Refuse Service to change the calculation and use the operating margin formula. And that change in mathematical calculations will change the profit levels of MVRS, which are currently at the lower end of the spectrum in this industry. They were around 5% in 2022 and also in 2023, even though they're actually permitted to earn up to a 10% profit. And again, that's low on the spectrum of this industry. And then, Scott, I'll turn it over to you to go to more detail.
Sure. Thank you. Again, I'm Scott Hannon with R3, and I'm happy to be back. And if I could have a tangent for 1 second. I left my house and it was like 91 degrees in Pleasant Hill. Had the air conditioner blaring, obviously. Got about 5 miles from home when I looked at how much battery life was still on the car and realized, every so often it doesn't charge last night. And thinking, what am I going to do after this meeting? And then the light bulb went off. So thank you. It's charging, and I used Apple Pay. I just wanted to share that. So all of the consultants who leave late at night who are worried, thanking you in advance for them. So we talked about this at the last meeting, and it's confusing even for us. But the big picture, what we were trying to do was, based on the direction we were getting from the staff, was try to keep any future rate increase, and in this case, it's down the road, it's not right away, below 2%, which I would tell you, and I think I mentioned this last time, is very low compared to what we're seeing for new franchise agreements. I think I mentioned we were in the process of doing all 4 cities over the bridge, and we fought kicking and screaming for 6 to 9 months to keep the residential rate increase at 9 point something, just not a 10, please. And commercial wound up around 16. And the companies, and in those cases, there were four cities who had the same hauler for a long time, just like here. With the exception of Richmond, the other 3 cities are a little bigger, but Hercules, Pinole, and San Pablo. And 2 decided they wanted to go with the current contractor they've always had. 2 decided they want to go out to bid. The circumstances are not entirely the same. All 4 cities wound up within 1 percentage point of each other. That could happen here if you were to go out to bid or not. So what we tried to look at, and the company can obviously speak for itself, but they requested significantly more than where we landed. We tried to focus on these 2 issues because they're inconsistent what all of the other Mill Valley refuse cities do, inconsistent, I think, with all the franchisors in Marin, and inconsistent with most franchises everywhere. This is really a math thing. They're allowed a 10% profit, so that when you think of a 10% profit, well, that must mean it's 90%. It's 100 minus 10. But when you do an operating margin, that means you're getting a 90% profit. And it sounds convoluted, so that's why we tried to put the math up there. But essentially what happens is when you change the math calculation from a cost plus contract to a operating margin contract, which is the industry standard, it results in the company receiving a little over 1% profit. It doesn't matter whether I do the math here or do the math in San Francisco or do the math anywhere. It just, the math results in like 1% and change more. And it's just the math work of changing the formula. For those consistency reasons, that was the one that we picked first. Similarly with interest expense, we were concerned, one, it's inconsistent, similarly to the profit calculation, but also we were concerned that it creates a disincentive for the company to do R&D, to, if they can't afford to pay cash, but they want to buy or try electric vehicles or something that's not included in their current allowed expenses, often profit and interest is allowed, so they can at least know they're not just going to lose all of the money. So just like anyone who borrows money for their house or for cars or whatever, they're asking for the interest expense if they finance something, particularly when rates are low, relatively low, to allow that. And because these two were consistent, this is where we sort of drew the line. And then we tried working with the company to match additional services to the city that were at least 1.3% of value. And that's what Lorena just went over. So that was sort of the goal of where we're going. Did I miss anything? I think that's, we landed at a 15-year term. And we talked a lot about ultimately you would come back with a new modern agreement, which is significantly longer and in more detail than the one you have now, and more accurately reflect the services if you decide to go forward. Again, I would just harp on that an RFP is unpredictable. The economy is not what it used to be. And as you know, after the pandemic, all bets were off on what to expect. So I think in your case, you have one of the highest levels of service that I've ever seen. When you look at the 4 bulky good pickups, the disallowed expenses on street sweeping, the disallowed expenses on the porta potties, most companies would be like, not going to happen, to be really candid. So there's a risk that if you go out to bid, you could see a significant increase and potentially less service. And who knows what these guys would do if they were put in that situation. So in your case, I think there's a big risk to go out to bid, in addition to the cost of doing it. Again, maybe you could do better, but you have a local player here who seems to be demonstrating that they really want to be here. And they're demonstrating by the financial terms they're willing to agree to that compared to typical franchisors, they're not being greedy here. And I've seen some of that elsewhere. So happy to help with once staff finishes, any other questions I can help you with. Happy to do that.
Thank you, Scott. And I'll just add that in one of the slides, I don't think we mentioned it, but Mill Valley Refuse Service did request basically 5 core adjustments initially. And as I mentioned earlier in the table that I put in the staff report, we actually landed on 6 adjustments for the town, only 2 for Mill Valley Refuse Service, and then 2 that benefited both sides. So there was some, a lot of discussion that led to the points that were the preliminary terms that we're bringing before you today. And so based on that information presented, we are recommending that council authorize the town manager to execute the term sheet or the preliminary term sheet that was included in the staff report with Mill Valley Refuse Service, and then allow the town manager to work on developing a new modern franchise agreement with cost recoverable through Mill Valley Refuse Service, and also direct staff to negotiate on that agreement for services beginning January 1st, 2027. I will add that the request to waive the competitive bidding process and authorizing Adam Wolf to negotiate the terms is allowed per the town's municipal code. So if council were to waive that competitive bidding process, staff would then work with Mill Valley Refuse Service to develop that new modern agreement. And then we would return to council prior to the expiration of the current agreement for a formal approval by the council through a resolution. And that approval would be on the term, the rates of collection, and other formal provisions. And that formal approval through adoption of a resolution is required by the municipal code.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all the staff's work on this and negotiation and R3 and Mill Valley Refuse. So I'll bring it here for questions first.
For questions, can we maybe just hear from Mill Valley Refuge? Thanks.
Yes, would you? I'm sorry.
Are you okay with that?
Oh, yes. Were you asking me? Yes, I guess that's fine. Do you have any specific questions or?
I just want to see your feedback, what you thought about the process, and again, where you guys are coming from, negotiating and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. So my name is Gene Del Zopa. I'm a CEO of Mill Valley Refuse Service. Over the past 3 months, we worked very closely with Scott and Claire from R3, as well as Adam and Lorena. I felt like through the negotiation process, it worked really, really well. I think we went over what was important for the town of Corte Madera and also what was important for Mill Valley Refuse Service. And I was really appreciative of the level of detail and thoughtfulness that went into a lot of core aspects of the deal. So in terms of the preliminary terms, we really went through a lot of different scenarios, and through that process, we were able to kind of find mutually beneficial preliminary terms and overall the experience was really positive. It was great working with Lorena and Adam, and all the questions that were asked. I feel like we gained a lot more insights in what's most important for the town of Corte Madera. So thank you.
Great. Why don't you just kind of hang up there in case anybody else has any questions? Would that be all right? Okay. More questions?
Yeah,
Fred?
these questions. The first 2 years, I think you said there's like 1.3% increases to residents.
Not exactly.
Yeah. I could try to explain that, Councilmember Casisa. So one of the points, frankly, that I pushed on would be the 1.3% refers to if there was a detailed rate review. And the council's experienced, there's some years where it comes to the council and they're basically use the CPI adjusted increase, and that's what gets passed on essentially to customers. Other years they have the opportunity to use a detailed rate review, which then gets all Tiburon, Mill Valley, Corte Madera, the other districts that are customers of MVRS. We'll get together and we'll do an analysis, an independent third-party analysis of the rate review, which is essentially what Scott was trying to explain is sort of their operating costs, plus they're allowed a profit on top of that. And based on that is what they're going to set the rates at for the next year. So the 1.3% increase, and those are the adjustments. Those are essentially equal to the adjustments made and that we essentially agreed to during the part of this negotiation on the interest expense and so what's that?
The profit.
Right. The profit calculation and adjusting that would only go into effect if there was a detailed rate review. Part of this agreement is we're saying when the first 2 years of the agreement, we want you to use CPI only and not use this detailed rate review. And so that would essentially lock in, we're going to be using the CPI without coming back for that detailed analysis for those first 2 years. And so the 1.3% would then hit year 3, essentially, if in fact they did a detailed rate review in the year 3. There's a little bit of a nuance because the rates are set in the fiscal years. So we just went through the rate review process. So Corte Madera residents will see, I think it was what was it, 2.8 or
2.8%.
2.8% increase this next year. That was based on CPI. Next June or May or June, we'll be in the same discussion. They'll be presenting us with something about what the rates are going to be for 26, 27. But this actual agreement right now would start January 1st, 2027. So like halfway through that period. That's something we may want to think about during, if we get into the actually take this the next step and start to write out the actual terms of a new contract or agreement with them, would be perhaps the council, if the council wanted to, staff could come back and say, you know, actually, let's start this on July 1st, 2026, which would mean we'd be using CPI next year and the year after, 26, 27, 27, 28, and then MVRS would have the ability to do a detailed rate review, and potentially the 1.3% would hit that.
Can I jump in real quick with some
go ahead.
clarifying questions on this, though? So first of all, just want to make sure I understand. So under this term sheet, the first 3 years, the increases you would expect to see would be CPI, 1.3%.
Sorry, no, it's first 2 years, and then would be CPI. The third year, what we're saying is, compared to how the current analysis is done in a detailed rate review, it would be 1.3% higher. It could be 1.3% higher than under the current, essentially allowable costs that are passed on to residents.
So two other questions just about that, and then I'll turn it back over to Fred. But one is,
Scott, please jump in
you explained to us that there are years when the increase is just CPI, and there are years when the increase is calculated through the detailed rate review, both of which we've seen. We've also seen a third scenario where there is no rate increase, and that doesn't seem to be contemplated as a possibility here.
I think that was maybe do we have the analysis? Because we've done
I have
that, and maybe actually, Gene, you can speak to when we're.
Yeah, there was a year where we didn't have a rate increase. It was 2022 to 2023. So just to kind of show how rate increases work, like historically, over the last 5 years, average annual rate increase has been 3.3%. So part of it is when you have CPI based adjustments, and then you have detailed. When you look at it on a 5-year basis, it's going to start to smooth out, and that's where we get to the 3.3%. And then for this current cycle, it's 2.8%. So it is below the 5-year average.
The other point I would make is remember the 1.3% was balanced by new additional services. So it was offset that, okay, we're going to let you potentially earn 1.3 more.
Additional services, a lot of which are referred to in the staff report as coming at no cost.
Some are, some aren't. It's built into the 1.3. We're trying to match a value that's at least 1.3%. It's not, they're not charging you for their services. It relates to the 1.3. If we would have given them were recommended, and you would have given them a 6% increase, and you would probably expect at least 6% value of new things, would be my guess. So if you were to say, okay, we want the 0 rate increase, then I think the scenario is that all the services stay the same, all the rate setting stays the same, and you kind of leave it the way it is, and you don't. And the other point is, in the first 2 years, those additional services will begin, even though they won't get their 1.3 till at least year 3.
That graph that we just had up showed a rate increase for 22-23. But I believe we've just established that there was no rate increase.
Yeah, it is inconsistent. So I'm not sure exactly why there's an inconsistency there with the data on our chart. But I think there was a year, as you said, where there was a 0% increase. So it may just be a mistake in our table or our chart that we had up.
Okay, go ahead, Fred. Sorry.
Do we need to worry at all that we have CPI year 1, CPI year 2, and then all of a sudden year 3 rates spike up like 10% or 15% and they go through the roof. And I know you can't predict the future. It's just, low, and then all of a sudden there's a huge.
I think I don't know if it's a worry or if it's a benefit, but that would be a decision point that if you have feedback on, I mean, that was sort of something that we would, I thought would sort of be more of traditionally the CPIs have been lower or, than a detailed rate review increase. So it sort of keeps that lower until there's a detail, and it may spike up a little bit on that more than it otherwise would. Gene, you have
I think that's a fair question. I think given the change in CARB is the California Air Resources Board. They would provide regulatory enforcement with respects to transition to zero emission vehicles. That has created a lot of kind of uncertainty on the CapEx side. But I will say that given the contract terms, and part of what we worked at internally is we feel like we'll be able to reinvest for capital expenditures. And we did provide an asset schedule to R3 and Corte Madera where we've kind of shown out how we are carving out infrastructure upgrades. It's something that we want to be conservative with respects to the return on the costs that we're investing in the business. We do have a union contract, labor union contract that will come up for negotiation in 2027. But given the previous union contract with the increases that we have, I'm anticipating that to be more conservative than the union contract we currently are in. So that's something to keep in mind. It's really going to boil down to capital investments on the truck side and then also labor costs.
Okay, thanks. And then on the CPI stuff, there's no floor ceilings on those, right? Whatever CPI is, it is.
Right.
Okay. And then something you said before, I know we're looking at 2027 for this contract, but you said something, can we escalate it and kick it in 26? Is that what you said before?
I think that's certainly, I wouldn't say it would be January 1st, 2026, just because I think we have some work to do, but certainly I think by mid-year next year, we'd be in a position if the council wanted to move that direction and MVRS was agreeable, that would be something that we could consider and work toward. So, yeah, we want to be cognitive of, matching up fiscal year periods, and it's something typical that we can work internally. Yeah, I think that's just matching it up would make sense. Matching up the dates essentially with. So to me, that may be something we want to consider is starting this new agreement. If we wanted to change it, that was a benefit, started on July 1st, 2026.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I may have more, but that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred. What about down here, Jim?
Yeah, I want to triple check that CPI you're referring to is the CPI-Urban National, not Bay Area.
Let me give a point of clarification. The CPI that we use, the Consumer Price Index, is based on Oakland, San Francisco, and Hayward. That's the CPI measure that we use.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
Yeah. I'm happy to provide the reports we get from Bureau of Labor Statistics if that's helpful.
No, I just looked it up, from 06 to I think April. I think it was up. One was up like 71%. The other was up 62%. And I was saying, okay, I want to make certain which one we're using. Then the operating margin allowable costs where am I correct in thinking interest will be included in allowable costs?
Yes.
And
if you agree. Yes.
Consultant, is there any sort of bias that would get them to skew their capital base more towards borrowing than equity?
Gene knows the inside the weeds better than I do, because I haven't worked on the detail rate reviews here for us. But I would say because you have the detail rate reviews, And the way I know it's structured, if they were doing that, we would probably argue that we would disallow expenses that seem unreasonable. Why are you doing that? Why are you, it makes no sense. The interest rate's this. Why would you do that? And then recommend to the town and the council to disallow that piece that just is inconsistent with industry best practice, I guess I would say.
A good example is if we were to take out a loan with interest rate, right, that's way above fair market value. That would be something that would be considered disallowed.
Or a private equity firm came in and you took out a huge loan and paid it to the private equity firm as a dividend, and you were gutted. Okay.
All done,
Thank you.
Councilmember and Vice Mayor Thomas.
Yes. So I had a little question about when you talk about infrastructure. I'm hearing what I've heard about is your trucks, and I assume some improvements to your plant. And what I was wondering about are different services or levels of recycling. Like, I'm sure you've heard of the company Ridwell. Yeah. So the types of things and the types of recycling that they do. And what I was wondering first of all, is there any idea that somewhere in the future Mill Valley Refuse would have that kind of facility or that kind of ability to recycle these various types of plastics that perhaps you don't do now? I'm assuming that's true.
This is a excellent question. So part of the recycled materials that we do haul over, those labels and those criteria does change given the standards based upon Marine Resource Recovery Center. So just something recently that has changed is we now are accepting plastic clamshells. So we've updated our tool that, it's a what goes where. So that has changed. In addition, with respect to Ridwell, how do I say this diplomatically?
Go ahead,
I think that with Ridwell, for instance, one of their service models is they accept batteries. But part of our existing agreements with the Marin Household Hazardous Waste Program, we do that as a courtesy with respect to residents. So if they call us and they want us to haul away specific hazardous materials such as batteries, we will take that. And I do see that type of service expanding, given that Ridwell is in Marin, and I can't control that. I can't change that. But what I can guarantee you is that with respect to a lot of the services that we have with hazardous material, we will go through that custody of change and making sure that it goes to Marin hazardous household waste program. I think that with recycling as well, there is extended producer responsibility bills on the way. Right now, the regulatory text with SB 54 is starting to be finalized. And I think this is a big step for the industry as a whole, given that producers now are going to be given a higher criteria with respect to product packaging. And if the materials that we are producing are becoming more recyclable, the industry is going to be better off of it. And that's going to help communities reach their sustainability initiatives. And it's going to shift the cost away from the producers to the consumers back to the producers themselves. And that's something that we're going to see a benefit as that regulatory text gets finalized and as it gets enforceable. So hopefully that answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, most of my questions have been answered. I was going to ask that same one. I just want to confirm, you mentioned the increase in services for special pickups for multifamily developments, but I want to confirm that there's been no reduction in those services for single family homes, that we still, is it 2 times a year?
Yeah, so it's 4 curbside cleanups, and it's 3 for trash and 1 for compost. I worked with Adam and Lorena in terms of analyzing trends of who's leveraging the curbside cleanups. I do think that's an avenue where we can get more usage out of the program. Off the top of my head, I think it was around 18% on a 5-year
very
average that
It
used
took
the
advantage.
cleanup.
Uh-huh.
There are super users that use all 4, which is great, but that is something that we want residents to be aware of because it's a huge benefit to households. And, it's just something that needs to be scheduled in advance. It gives us enough time to dedicate the resources and making sure that's properly handled.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about using the yard waste one as well and trying to sync that up with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority when they're ramping up their vegetation management programs, reminding folks that they already have, don't need a sort of chipper day or a special resource. We already have a resource available for most residents. So, certainly we're going to be focused as well on just those educational campaigns and marketing that Lorena.
Great, because I hadn't heard about the clamshells. That will be big news for all my crunchy friends because that's one of the reasons they're not allowed in my house. I mean, I say, don't buy them because you can't recycle them and I don't want to throw so the clear ones and the white ones.
I believe it's the clear plastic ones. I can check in with Justin Wilcox at Marin Resource Recovery Center. But I think it's a good thing that, I'm glad that they gave us ample time as well, saying, hey, we're accepting this now. We want it into that recycling stream. And their team is going to do what they can to make sure that that's recoverable and recyclable.
And it goes in with the containers and.
Correct. Goes in with the containers.
All right. Well, that's all I had. Red, did you have something else? Anybody else?
I've got questions.
Did we not go to you?
I jumped in for
that's right.
in the middle of Fred's, but so first, and I think most importantly, can you help me understand exactly what the implications of the change to the profit calculation formula are? So I understand that we're going from what's called cost plus, which is allowable costs plus 10% of 90%, which is 9%. So we're going from allowable costs plus 9% to allowable costs times 1/9 times 90%. 1/9 of 90% is 10%. So we're going from allowable costs plus 9% to allowable costs times 10%.
Correct. So what that would mean is if the company during the next detailed rate review was under the current method due to get a 2% increase, it would be a little bit over a 3% increase. Just based on how the calculation works below the line at the bottom. When you do that math calculation at the after expenses, that's the simplest way is there will be a little over 1.1% additional rate impact of changing the calculation.
Okay, because another way to look at that would be a more than 50% increase in what the rate adjustment would have been. But you're saying that should.
I don't know what it's 1% regardless of if the rate adjustment's 6%, it's 1% more. It's not half.
All right. Yeah.
It's always going to be 1% more.
Okay.
Regardless of the dollar, regardless of the percentage amount.
Okay. All right. So that is that question. A few questions just about some of the more minor points in the staff report. What is a new style portable toilet?
That's what we requested. We were going to go to Gene for that one. I know they've been researching and exploring what's out there in the market of portable toilets. So I'm going to ask Gene what they are.
So part of the goal is we want to find something that's aesthetically pleasing that would work in terms of the enclosure. We're not, we're not getting like portable toilets that you would see typically at like a music festival, but we're exploring alternative options, something that would be mutually agreed upon. Yeah. Yeah, something you typically don't see at a contractor site. Well,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I mean, just a point of feedback on this staff report. I think there are terms used as terms in the staff report that I don't know are actually generally accepted terms with any generally accepted meaning. So like, I don't know what a new style portable toilet is. I don't know what a permanent or a semi-permanent portable toilet is. Those would seem to be oxymorons. So I'm just trying to, I mean, I didn't really understand what exactly we're talking about here, and it's toilet, so I'm not going to get super hung up on it. But point of feedback, I think there's some room for clarification there. I wanted to clarify when we are talking about an allowance/reserve for some of these toilet services, that's talking about basically like a credit, right? A bill credit. Is that the idea?
Yeah. So part of the contract, the initial allowance was 12,000. We want to increase that up to 30,000 because the whole purpose of us providing portable toilet service to the town is we want it to be a contractual benefit. And part of that is that number needs to get adjusted to market in terms of the cost of servicing the portable toilets, and also it's, costs go up during the summertime because we get more units with respect to the site locations and we're out there more frequently. So part of that reserve is we wanted to increase that amount so that it's more reflective of market conditions with respect to servicing portable toilets.
Okay. I think I was primarily confused because I've heard of an allowance in a contract. I've not heard of a reserve or an allowance/reserve. So that made it harder for me to understand what we're talking about here. On the town request around data and reporting, can you please put a little more color to exactly what type of data it is that we're now going to be getting and what type of insights that's going to yield?
Having not done the agreement yet, but knowing what would be in it, it really brings the reporting up to what CalRecycle requires around not just 1383, but all of the years of diversion programs. So we have this whole list of very detailed, regular reporting, including on diversion that meets exactly what CalRecycle is expecting when you file your annual report to CalRecycle. We work with CalRecycle regularly. So it's really modeled around getting you all of the information you need to determine, for instance, how many people, if you're interested, how many people are using the 4 bulky good pickups, and how many times. Based on what I've heard, I think that's something we're going to want to add. But generally speaking, it's making sure that you're in full compliance with state law is the most important premise. And then it's all the information that you would typically look for or a resident would ask. It's a lot, and it's going to be a lot more than what they have now.
So if we're not currently compliant with state law in terms of our reporting and our data gathering, how is that? I mean, is there a provision in the state law that you just have to become compliant when you next update your franchise agreement, or what? How is it that we're not compliant?
Yeah, I don't know whether you're compliant or not. I'm saying you may be compliant. I believe you're compliant, but it may be cobbled together as opposed to, and they may be giving you exactly what CalRecycle wants, but it's not in your agreement.
Right.
Now it will be in your agreement.
Okay.
And just clear what's required.
Okay. Last question for now. I looked through our existing franchise agreement, not exhaustively, but I didn't see it. What are the termination provisions?
We will have to look for that as well.
Stumped.
Sorry, I should have asked you this ahead of time, but it occurred to me during the meeting and I was poking through the existing franchise agreement and I did not see a termination section.
Is there one that you could, if there's another question, we can look for this while you ask.
Sounds good. No, I don't have any other questions. And there's termination for non-performance. There's excuse for performance in like the event of a disaster. I think my question is, if 10 years from now, another opportunity, like let's say hypothetically, right, 10 years from now, the cities of Marin County decide to create a solid waste JPA. Can we exit this agreement with some?
Well, and this is the detailed legal actual document that we haven't drafted yet. So if this is something that you want us to make sure we have
Okay.
those things in an agreement, we certainly, now that's great feedback for us to sort of work toward if we make the next step with
Okay.
MVRS.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Just one quick follow-up question for Scott. Termination provisions, what have you typically seen in other agreements, just on a high level?
Doing it from memory, because fortunately it hasn't happened in my experience. We also, just as a related aside, and I don't recall if it's in your current agreement or not, but we also have a detailed set of liquidated damages. So those are there to try to keep things from getting bad enough that you'd ever need a termination. Having said that, our termination would go through full details of if the company were to breach, what are all those things that would be considered a breach, opportunities to cure. To go to your question, if the city, what are the city's rights in terms of termination? And because you're obligated to a certain period for them, so what you sort of have to negotiate your way out of it, I guess. But we have sort of a reviewed by so many different city and town attorneys and JPA attorneys, really detailed, plus reviewed by every company that you're going to think of that would ever consider coming here, has reviewed our termination clauses, and both groups are comfortable with them.
Right. And I can answer. Our current agreement has a termination for non-performance, which includes failure to comply with any laws, ordinances, or regulations, or defaults under certain provisions of the agreement. And there is an opportunity to cure for a period after 45 days notice, an opportunity to have a hearing, and an opportunity to cure.
I think my question more is there the possibility of essentially no cause termination, right? Because I would never expect MVRS to fail to perform. It's more just that I want to know if the town can choose a different route midstream.
We don't have that currently,
Okay.
But that's something we could consider when we're drafting the agreement.
And just one last one in this area, is there set up for mandatory mediation, arbitration of any disputes prior to any legal action? Do we have that in the agreement?
It's jurisdiction to jurisdiction has different views potentially, but I think in most of ours, we try to structure it, and as the council has the last say, that there's a process to cure all of these things that lead up to ultimately the city council. And typically we don't go through an arbitration process.
It'd be more like a mediation.
We do not have an arbitration.
Typically we do not have a mediation process.
Okay, it's just negotiations between you, and then it comes to the council if there's anything outstanding. Okay.
That's we obviously represent the jurisdiction side, but we're trying to keep the final decision there and not going to a third party who may not have the expertise to try to find an outcome.
Sounds good.
And typically the companies are okay with it if those terms are not out of the norm.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's some work to do, but that it's going in the right direction. So, let's see, did we go to public yet? I don't think we did. That was just supposed to be the question session rather than the comments, but is there anybody in the audience who would like to say something? If not, is there anybody online with their hand up?
None of the attendees online have their hand up, and we didn't receive emailed public comment for this item.
Okay, can I bring it back to the council for a motion? Or comments or?
I mean, I've got some comments that I'd like to make. I think folks have heard me say this before, but I am uncomfortable with the idea of private for-profit companies providing critical municipal services. This is not a knock on Mill Valley Refuse, which is an honest, hardworking local family-owned company, and certainly not a knock on their leadership, who are nothing but fine and upstanding people. This is more just my own personal philosophy. I think it would be beneficial to the cities of Marin and Marin County to look at creating a solid waste hauling and processing JPA. But I realize that that is sort of a revolutionary thought, and that's not what we're here to discuss tonight. Bringing my focus back to what's in front of us here, I think, my main concern, and I will just say, by the way, if we did a waste hauling JPA, we would have the ability to look at providing services similar to what, for example, Ridwell is providing. We would have control over, what materials we can haul or process, obviously within the bounds of, the technology that exists. But, we wouldn't have to simply settle for the services that are offered to us. But again, maybe that's besides the point. So looking at, what we're discussing here, I think one, I am interested in looking at a termination provision, because I want to know that if all of the cities in Marin are locked into 15 or 20-year JPA agreements that all start and end at different times, there will never be an opportunity for us to create or even look at creating a solid waste JPA. So I want to know that there is a real path for these discussions to happen, and that if through this exploratory process it looks like that's what makes sense, I want to know that there's an opportunity for the cities to say, great, thank you so much to our haulers and processors. We appreciate your service. We're going to start our own JPA now. So that's important to me. I will also just say, and I have spoken about this at length over the years, but I think I have a real problem with the fundamental way that the allowable profit margin is structured in these contracts, where allowable profit is a percentage of the cost of doing business for MVRS. MVRS, I know, does not game the system, and I really appreciate that. But just from a public perception standpoint, it creates a dynamic where when the cost of service goes up, the dollar value of the waste hauler's profit goes up, right? When it gets more expensive to provide the services, the companies providing the services make more money. I think that is a huge problem. I would support us being far more maybe creative in looking at alternative ways that we could structure, a contract to make sure that our hauler gets a fair rate of return, but that we're not incentivizing this sort of slow runaway train of costs. I've been talking about this for years. Our franchise agreement is coming up. It's a once in a 20-year thing. I'm really uncomfortable with, just hitching our wagon to the same type of agreement for another 20 years. And folks may or may not agree with me. That's okay. But I wanted to just, put it out there and make sure that folks understand where I'm at on this, because it's a concern of mine. Yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Anybody else?
Yeah. If all the towns in southern Marin suddenly decided they wanted to get in the trash hauling business, we could set up a JPA, a boatload of money, and make him an offer to buy out the family. Okay, let's be honest about it.
The thought has crossed my mind. The thought has crossed my mind.
I know, but that means that we would then have to find staff who actually knew how to run that business.
Well, if we're buying in this hypothetical world, if we're buying MVRS, it comes with their excellent staff.
They're going to take the money and run,
Look, and the analogy that I would just create is, we're talking about solid waste, right? We have a JPA that handles our liquid waste, right? Central Marin Sanitation Agency, collects and treats all of our wastewater, and they do it in a very efficient, mission-driven way. They do it at an extremely good, extremely competitive cost for taxpayers. So I'm just saying that, I think there's other structures that cities should look at.
Anything else, Jim?
That's it.
Vice Mayor Rosa.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll say is that, JPAs are very complicated, as I'm noting, working with on the Fire Council, and also with MBPA. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I'm open to the idea of having a shorter term, but I don't think that I don't think that at this time, this is something we can really sort of, give any body to, because we just don't know how anything like that would be structured at this time. So my thought is, well, the first thing I thought of when I saw this is just I was surprised that the contracts were 20 years long. I understand why they have to be long, because it just doesn't make any sense to do this, every 5 years, But, at this point, what I'm looking at is that we've had good service for Mill Valley Refuse. It sounds like they are trying to do the right thing by, the cities that they serve, and specifically by Corte Madera. But I don't know, I think it's great to sort of entertain this possibility, because it sounds like your main motivation for it is that it would contain cost. But I think if we're looking at what we have to do here tonight, I don't know, is there some idea of, or a reason why, these arrangements can't be 10 years long? I mean, I don't know. I don't know why they're this long.
If you're looking, many are 10. It just through negotiations, we landed at 15. We would never recommend less than 10, because it really hurts their ability to invest and the ability to amortize and spread it over your rate base. So carts typically last 10 to 15 years. Trucks, you want to think about getting them off the road 10-ish.
Yeah. 10 to 11.
So if you end at 10, there's no ish. Everything you buy during the term has to be amortized in that term. So that's usually the capital that drives the term. And as Jean was mentioning, they're really spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to do that, and how to keep their fleet not only well repaired but modern, whether that's alternate fuels or zero emission, or they're trying to stay sort of cutting edge, and that just requires some long-term investment. That's the main reason. There's nothing magic otherwise about 10 than capital.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's good. So we don't need to debate it now. Leave it at that and hear what everybody else has to say.
Okay, Fred has something.
Yeah, I'll just boil it down this way. I'm okay with us waiving the competitive bidding process, and I'm okay with you, Adam, to continue to negotiate with them, taking into consideration some of the comments that the council has made. I think that's a smart way to go, because you're going to have to come back to us with that contract anyway for us to review it and approve it. And that may be the opportunity for us to have more of a say in it. Or again, some of the comments that Eli's made and Rosa's made, there may be more of a creative way to do things. I think at this point of time, to me, I think Mill Valley Refuge, you guys are probably the best fit for Corte Madera. You guys are like family oriented. I think we're community oriented. And I just feel like your company is a good fit for us. I like some of the things that you've kind of, I want to say given, even though I know there may be a built-in cost, like, adding debris boxes for vegetation management for Central Minute, help us with vegetation management. I think that's key one. The multifamily pickups and some of the other ones you have in there you've not given to us, but provided to us. I think that's going to help us also. But again, I think one of the key things is it sounds like the negotiations have gone smoother than if we were dealing with some huge company. It just seems like it's been a lot smoother and easier to deal with. So again, I appreciate that. Thanks.
And I just want to.
Sorry.
I just want to acknowledge Rosa's point that even if we were to decide ultimately all the cities to do a JPA, that process would take like 5 or 10 years, and we need obviously a waste hauling contract with a waste hauling company in the intervening time. My broader point that I'm trying to make is that I have zero interest in voting to support a franchise agreement that precludes us from having those conversations and taking that path if we decide that's what's in our community's best interest.
Okay, thank you. I would like to just say a couple things. I agree totally that Mill Valley Refuse has done a really good job serving Corte Madera. And I know that on a personal level, from being out on the street when the trucks come by, your guys are happy, productive, smiling, waving, waiting for my grandson to catch up so he can actually see the thing go into the, you know, how little kids love the trash trucks. You're famous with them. And so I have really, for 33 years now, really appreciated the service you provide. And I'm really glad that the town seems to be on the path to not going out for an RFP. I've been a big supporter of yours. On the question of the government getting into the trash hauling business, I thought you and I agreed on everything, but this is one where I attended some sessions on public-private partnerships with Cal Cities and listened to lawyers and city managers talk about best practices. And a great philosophy I heard is, don't grow your government and make your government bigger. Work with those who know how to do what they're doing, use their expertise. And yes, I could see where there could be a partnership of all the towns in Marin, and we all decide to work with Mill Valley Refuse and expand you, or maybe Mill Valley Refuse and the other ones merge, and we get the bargaining chip of having, a bigger group. But government this small, getting into the trash hauling business, I can think of 10 other things I'd do first. I'd merge our parks and rec. I would do joint, all kinds of things before trash would ever arise to that need, especially when the service we're receiving is so good. You got to have a problem to solve if you're going to do all that work. And I just don't see that there's a problem to solve. So that to me is the bottom line. But, by the time this comes up, you'll have 5 new people sitting here with 5 new opinions. So there's a certain amount of unknown to any of these things, but I think we are ready for a motion.
Well,
No?
Yeah.
oh, okay. I think what we're asking for, if you want to do a motion, maybe do them 2 separate ones.
Okay.
One would be on waiving the, direction to waive the.
So I'll go ahead and make the motion to waive competitive bidding and authorize. I can't put them both in one.
You can do 2 separate motions if you need them.
I think we're trying to make sure, I want to make
Try and read the
sure,
whole sentence.
well, I want to make sure that we
Okay,
have.
I'll separate them out. So let me do this. I'll go ahead and make the motion to waive the competitive bidding process with respect to Mill Valley Refuge and our garbage contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman,
Sure.
Councilmember Casissa,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes.
Okay,
you.
and then I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to negotiate the terms of a new agreement with Mill Valley Refuge Services for collection, removal, and delivery for recycling, processing, and disposal of solid waste.
Is there a second?
Sorry, hold on. I just trying to get clarification. I think that's perfectly, that's part of the motion, I think. And I just want to get clarity from the council regarding the actual, we had about 10 deal points or, preliminary items. If there's any of those that you had comments on that could provide us with direction going into the next phase of agreements. What's it?
I think everybody's given the comments that they had. I think we heard the points and where there were
I know there's
concerns.
I know
they came up.
I know some of these though. I think there was the termination provision, which I think we clearly heard from Councilmember Beckman. That I don't know if there's a term that you want us to go back and talk about the term. We have a 15
Oh,
plus
the profit, the new 1%.
term of the agreement.
Oh, the term of one.
Well, I'm the one who brought.
Yes.
I'll say, if we were going to have any kind of a JPA.
Vice Mayor Thomas.
Oh,
Mayor-
in relationship to, it can take 5 or 10 years just to sort that out. So I think even with the term being 20 years, there's time.
15
And
years.
just to clarify.
15, right, 15 plus 5. I think the difference between 15 and 10 is so small that, and I think we can leave it just the way it is.
All right. Thank you. I'm just trying to get.
Yeah, and I would add that I think if you have a shorter term, you don't necessarily need a voluntary termination clause, and vice versa. If you have a longer term, the voluntary termination ability becomes more important.
So is 15 long or short?
It's longer.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, it's Eli's thought, but Well, so do we want to vote on
Well, that's
the
why we're
term?
trying, yeah.
Want to actually
like
vote
this-
on the
no,
term?
Not vote. We're trying to get direction on direction to staff on the next phase and what we're going to go back to them with. So if there are things that the council wants to give us direction on, this is the meeting to do that so that we can move forward on that.
I'm okay with 15 years.
Okay.
It seems like that's one of the bigger topics, and I'm okay with adding a termination agreement in there. Termination clause.
A volunteer, some sort of, we'll work on the
Yeah.
appropriate way that could get done. I understand.
Yeah, and like again, understanding that with this termination provision, which would make me okay with a 15-year term, we do not want to pull the rug out from under MVRS financially, right? And I understand that they've got costs that they need to be able to amortize and all of that. So that'll all be a negotiation. But I just want to know that the town of Corte Madera is going to have options.
After 10 years.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Keep in mind, you're not going to be here. You're going to be off, running the state by then. I'm just wondering if we can ask Mill Valley Refuse, what would be the difference to you in a 15-year, would you rather have a 15-year contract that's pretty iron? I mean, no, is it too late for that?
I really, I don't want to be negotiating a contract in public.
Okay, I just don't understand. I can't really comment on it because I don't really understand how much it would impact them to know that there's a termination clause where without any kind of just cause, we can just opt out. That seems like that would be a game changer for them.
Well, we need direction from.
That's a point for you to negotiate.
Yes, we need direction from council, but we're not going to engage in negotiations publicly. There is an option if council wants to have a subcommittee to work on the negotiations, that's another option. Or if we find there's problems, we can always come back.
Anybody else does anyone want to do a subcommittee? Do you want to be on a subcommittee to negotiate?
They find problems, they can come back to us.
Same?
Well, I have one question. I was looking at one of the older contracts, and it could be the current one there was a change of control in terms of Mill Valley Refuse. The new one will also have a change of control, termination, or prior approval.
That's our expert on typical.
Definitely.
I can comment as well.
A very detailed assignment provision and at the town's discretion to approve, paid for by the purchaser to do as much due diligence as you need. And it's just a very detailed process with your ultimate decision to allow for a sale.
And how much time do we have to make our decision?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's not small. It's like 6 months. It's not an insignificant amount of time.
That's like that in town government time.
The existing agreement?
No, not talking about, I'm talking about a future agreement.
Any other
would have a very detailed assignment provision.
I had a comment with the changes in
Yes, go ahead.
control. If it's greater than 51%, let's say three out of the four partners are out and it's someone new, that is something that would require explicit approval from the town with regards to the change in control. That's how some of the language is with contracts that we have.
And if it occurs, you've got, let's assume you have 5 partners, and each decade a partner croaks.
Well,
then what happens?
We actually have a buy-sell agreement that deals with those real scenarios. Not to knock on wood, hasn't happened, but yeah, if I'm gone tomorrow, my wife will be taken care of, and my partners will,
Right.
Get promoted.
That's probably all in their partnership agreements and buy-sell agreements and bylaws and their corporation and all of those things. I don't think the company would just.
While you're doing that,
it's still the control is still the existing partnership.
I think we will detail, get all the, again, when we bring back the agreement, it's going to be a legal agreement with hitting all of these pieces. And if there are questions at that point, we're happy to go into all the detail and sort of the different scenarios and whatnot that could happen and the sort of the legal provisions that allow decision-making to happen in certain circumstances. So
Do you have all the direction you need?
why so far, yes. If we're
More than you need.
No, I think we do. I think we have good direction. And if there's no further direction for us, those points that you've seen in the staff report look good, and we should move forward with those as sort of the framework and the basis for moving forward. There's other legal stuff that will get in there, trust me. Then yes, we feel like we have the direction we need to move forward.
Okay, so I made the motion. Do I need to repeat it or am I good? Okay, we don't.
We don't need another motion?
It said here, we also have to authorize the town manager to negotiate.
We did that.
No,
you did
Voted on just the.
I did
the waiving.
competitive.
We split it in half.
Yes. Yes, we did waiving.
So do I need to make the motion then? So I'll make the motion, authorize the town manager to negotiate the terms of a new agreement, Mill Valley Refuse Service for collection, removal, and delivery for recycling, processing, and disposal of solid waste.
Is there a second? Rosa?
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes, with direction per my comments.
thank you. Councilmember Casissa,
Yes, with direction provided by town council.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes, with directions provided by the council.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Your patience.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time and your service very much. Okay, that takes us to reports. First, we have our manager.
Pretty light. Hope everyone has had a chance. I don't know if you've gotten up to eat a smash burger yet, but there is a micro business now operating in Mankey Park. So check it out. It's creating quite the. We have comments. This is a pilot, so essentially it's a trial program, and there's A-frames with QR codes. We're wanting to hear all the feedback from our community about whether they like it or not, and feeling there's going to be a lot of mixed emotions on it. So we'll wait to see. But that's that. I think I've already noted my vacation is coming up. I'll be out for a week and a half. Rebecca Vaughn will be here in my place. There she is. Great. Thank you, Rebecca, so much in advance. And happy 4th of July parade. I'm sorry I'll miss it, but have a great day to all of you.
Thanks. Who wants to go first? Jim?
Well, I went to 2 meetings. One was the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. And we have approved their budget. And then TAM, same thing. So.
Very good. Rosa?
I have nothing to report.
Brad?
My only thing is I attended age-friendly Corte Madera meeting, and just mark your calendars. Hopefully Patty, if she's listening, doesn't kill me because hopefully I have the right date. 8/24/25 is where we're going to honor, I can't say a word, so we're going to honor our residents.
Octogenarians.
Thank you.
Well,
we're going to honor them. So mark your calendars. Thanks.
Eli.
On June 21st, I attended the ribbon cutting for the new renovations at the Corte Madera Library. On June 25th, I attended the MCCMC meeting. And on June 26th, we had a Central Marin Sanitation Agency ad hoc committee meeting.
Very good. And from me, just a couple things. One was the MCCM meeting. I did hear that they are going to get back to us with tobacco ordinance suggestions from the county. We should hear it sometime in August. And I guess they're saying they're going to come to us first. Since we brought it up, we're going to get a chance to kind of weigh in and see. Have you heard maybe more about that? You're making faces.
No, I think the county's going to roll it. I think we can talk about it, but I'm not sure the procedure of how they're going to go forward.
Okay. And then the other thing I want to report is that Rosa is going to take my place on the Chamber of Commerce, and I really appreciate her doing that. And that's all I have. Is there anybody else who needs any report from Amy Ackerman? Okay, well then I think we can look at the next month's agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to have added to the agenda? I have my normal 10 items, but I will resist. Anybody else? So I think that means we can adjourn. 9:15.
D2 budget.
Oh, okay, yes, and back in session for Sanitary District 2, can we have a roll call? Oh, Lorena's gone.
Board member Andrews?
I just got.
Thank you, Board Member Casissa. Board Member Andrews? We're calling the roll for the Sanitary District meeting. Board Member Beckman?
Still here.
Board Member Casissa?
Here.
Vice President Thomas?
Still here.
President Ravazio?
I'm here and looking
you.
for my agenda. Anyone got an extra sanitary?
Let's see. Do I have it?
It's too big. Okay. So open time for public comment. Open time for public comment. Don't see anyone in the room. Is there anyone with their hand raised regarding Sanitary District Number 2 public comment not on the agenda?
No hands raised from attendees online. No emailed public comment for this item.
Okay, and we show no presentations tonight. Number 4 is the consent calendar, just one item, the approval of the minutes from the June 17th Sanitary District meeting. Do I have anybody who wants to pull that off of the consent calendar, or do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll go and make the motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
And we didn't receive any public comment for the consent calendar or request to remove that single item. So with that, Board Member Andrews?
Yes.
Board Member Beckman?
Yes.
Board Member Casissa?
Yes.
Vice President Thomas?
Yes.
President Ravazio?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, up with a public hearing, consideration and possible adoption of Resolution 022025, approving the Sanitary District biannual open operating budget and capital plan for fiscal years 25-26 and 26-27. Do we have a staff report? Hello,
Director.
Chris. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Good evening, directors. So I have a short presentation regarding the 25-26, 26-27 operating budget and capital plan for Sanitary District Number 2. Next slide, please. We have this nice little sanitation district here. Here's the inflows of revenues. Split pretty evenly between property tax and fees, district fees. And next slide, please. Just a little pie chart to show a little visual breakout of revenues for the sanitation district. Next slide, please. So again, we're just projected very conservatively. 3% in property related taxes. And then again, just looking back to the rate study that the board of directors adopted and those increases. And then again, the capital plan anticipates additional debt in year 2 of this budget. That's that $10 million slug at the bottom there in year 26-27. Next slide, please. The operating expenses for the district, and again, the largest pieces there are related to CSMA's budget. We just pulled the numbers that they gave us, and then of course, services and overhead provided by the town for operating the sanitation district. Next slide, please. And again, I put together a little pie chart to help visualize the expenses for the sanitation district. Next slide, please. And then a very aggressive capital plan for the sanitation district over the next 2 years. And I think we talked about a lot of these. They're a little outside of my understanding, but if you have questions, I'm sure we could field some of those for you. And it's a very short presentation. It's a very nice, easy little district, in my opinion. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
The budget, I'm fine with the budget. On the last page where it says questions, what's that a picture of? It looks like it was looking down a manhole.
I think that's exactly what that is just down into the storm drains or down into the sewer. That was a picture provided by our assistant district manager. So I just kept it.
At least you know the budget's not going down the hole. We're good.
Go down the rabbit hole. So maybe that's what it is. It's a rabbit hole.
Okay, should I say, are there any serious questions?
Probably.
Anybody questions? Anybody in the audience have any questions? Is there anybody online with any questions?
We do have people online, but they do not have their hands raised with any questions, and we didn't receive any emailed questions or comments from the public for this item.
Can I ask how many people are still online?
There are 3, and Fernanda is one of them. In case you all have questions, she was ready to answer them.
Thank you, Fernanda.
Okay, if there are no more comments, are there any comments from council or a motion?
No, I appreciate all your hard work on this budget. Also, with that, I'll go ahead and make the motion to adopt resolution number 02-2025, approving sanitary district number 2 biannual operating budget and capital plan for fiscal years 25-26 and 26-27.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Board Member Andrews,
Yes.
Board Member Beckman,
Yes.
Board Member Casissa,
Yes.
Vice President Thomas,
Yes.
President Ravazio.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, and showing no business items, that brings us to district manager and board member reports.
I'll just make a quick note that Chris Good, who has been out on paternity leave, he returns to the office on Monday and will start his term as interim public works director / district manager for ST2. So
Great. How much paternity leave do we give?
it's leave time, and I don't know the
Couple
state laws
weeks, or-
around it, but he's been out for I think 5 weeks,
Okay, good.
4 weeks, 5 weeks total.
Seems like yesterday, but I know it's been a little while. Okay, anybody from the board with any reports? Any discussion of the draft agenda for upcoming meetings? If not, then we are adjourned.